We're back here, the weekend sports buzz. Very quick commercial break there. I wasn't ready for that, Kelly.
Oh, I'm ready to talk to Mo Egger, though.
We are.
Talk some Cincinnati Reds baseball. I know it's March Madness time, but we're Reds fans. We assume that being that the Louisville Bats here in Louisville, our listeners are Reds fans too. If you're not, you should be.
Oh, yeah.
We have our man Mo Egger on the line from ESPN in Cincinnati. How you doing this morning, Mo?
I'm doing great. How about you guys?
We're doing great. We appreciate you coming on this morning. Obviously, we're about a week away from opening day. Myself and Kelly here couldn't be more excited as huge Reds fans that we are baseball guys. I know yourself, you are just as excited, I'm sure.
Can't wait. Hope we get better weather for opening day. But, yeah, can't wait for the season to start.
You're not kidding. I believe it is about 20 degrees outside here, sleet and rain and snow going on. So I would hope in the next week or so it does upgrade again. But we do, of course, Mo Egger, ESPN 1530, 700 WLW, Cincinnati. Let's get right into it here. Obviously, we're in spring training. It is wrapping up here. First thing I wanted to bring up is the pitching rotation. So obviously we have the studs, at the top of the lineup. You have your Cueto, you have Homer Bailey. It seems that Bronson Arroyo, Aroldis Chapman now is going to be the official closer. What do you think about that?
Well, I think ultimately it was the right decision. And, all offseason long, I've leaned toward keeping him as a closer, but I could certainly understand the rationale behind wanting to make him a starting pitcher. Getting the most out of an investment, certainly tantalizing to think about, what he could do across the course of 30 starts down the road. But at the same time, I think you have to take into consideration the one thing that looms over Aroldis Chapman, and that's the unknown. I remember when the Reds signed him, talking with people in their scouting department and saying, okay, how do you quantify him? If you draft a player out of college, you could talk to his coach, his pitching coach. You can see how many bullpens he's thrown. You can see, you can get his medical history. You can get it down to probably a pitch, how many times he has pitched in a game. You can do almost the same thing in high school. You could talk to people who have seen him throw. You could talk to people that have worked on him medically. With Aroldis Chapman, you can't do any of that. And I think when he spoke last week and said, I want to be a closer, that's something you have to consider. Remember, here's a guy, each of the last 2 years, that has had shoulder fatigue. Now, nothing that's killed his season, but they had to shut him down for a little while last September. They had to put him on the DL 2 years ago. If I've got a guy, there's one person in the entire country that knows exactly, not even exactly, that has an idea of how much wear and tear is on that arm, has an idea of how many innings he's pitched. It's Aroldis Chapman. There's nobody else that can do that. And if he says, I'm more comfortable closing, and he's the only guy that has any real idea of how much is really on that arm, then you have to take that in a very close, careful consideration. I'm a big fan of known factors. I don't know how good Aroldis Chapman is as a starter. I do know he's very good as a closer. And I do know that with him as closer last year, his team won 97 games. And so, to me, the best thing to do was keep him as a starter, keep him as a closer. I could certainly understand why they tried to make him a starting pitcher. But at the end of the day, I think him coming out of the bullpen gives this team their best chance for success in 2013.
Now, Mo, that obviously has some other implications other than just making him our, kind of superstar closer that he was last year. You look at the fifth spot in the rotation. We have Mike Leake, who a few years ago was drafted out of Arizona State, didn't play any minor league ball at all. He pitched 138 innings in 2010, 167 in 2011, 179 innings last season in 2012. Do you think Mike Leake is a sufficient or even a good option as the fifth starter?
Yeah, because, let's look around Major League Baseball. On how many teams would Mike Leake be a 4 or a 3? I mean, if he's your fifth guy, and if your fifth guy is giving you close to 180 innings, that's pretty good. I think the one thing you tend to forget, this team's got a very good bullpen. They don't need every starter to go 8 innings and give up a run or two. They need your fifth starter to do what fifth starters do, go 5 or 6 innings, keep you in the game. Mike Leake can do that, and I think he's proven that he can do that. Now, is he going to have starts where he gets blistered? Yes, because that's what happens with fifth starters. Is he going to have starts where he can occasionally get you deep into games? I think he had 2 complete games last year. That's going to happen as well. You obviously would like for him to be a little bit more consistent. You obviously would like for him to be able to go a little bit deeper into games. But I look at Mike Leake, and I see a guy who, by definition, is a fifth starter. We tend to talk about rotations like a good rotation has 5 great pitchers. Well, that's not the case. It would be awesome if it were. And the Reds certainly do benefit from the fact that Johnny Cueto's an all-star. Matt Latos was very good last year. The light bulb went on for Homer Bailey, and Bronson Arroyo is still a workhorse. But if I'm talking about a fifth starter, then Mike Leake can fit that bill. Now, what's going to be interesting this year, they were really lucky last season. Nobody missed a start. They had 161 games started by their 5 starters. The one game was started by somebody else because of a doubleheader. So what happens this season when, and I think it's a matter of when, not if, when there's an injury, when a guy finally gets hurt, when a guy finally goes down, who makes up for that, who makes those starts? And what happens if, Homer Bailey regresses a little bit, or Johnny Cueto regresses a little bit, or the innings and age catch up to Bronson Arroyo? Those are all legitimate questions. But I think, Mike Leake's role on this team is one that I think most Reds fans can be pretty comfortable with. He's going to be okay. He's not going to be great. He's also not going to be terrible. And that's normally what I want from a number 5.
Yeah, I totally agree with, like you mentioned, the bullpen. You have Broxton, possibly Marshall, Acura, Arredondo, Hoover, and Massett, coming off his seems to be coming into his healthy role again. I'm okay with Leake being the 5 without a doubt. Kelly?
Mo, the identity of this team for a couple years has been a very good defensive team with a solid starting rotation and a good bullpen. There's been some changes. We lost say anything you want about him offensively. Drew Stubbs was an elite center fielder defensively. When healthy, Scott Rowland was an elite third baseman defensively. Now we have Shin-Soo Choo and obviously Todd Frazier at the third base spot. Do you think that's an area of concern that we may not be as good defensively as we have been over the past few seasons?
Well, if they make up for it offensively, no. If they don't make up for it offensively, then the answer is yes. But, we all wanted the Reds to find a different leadoff hitter, and we knew that was most likely to come from your center fielder. I mean, look around the diamond. It wasn't going to be your first baseman or second baseman. It really wasn't going to be your shortstop. It wasn't going to be your corner outfielder. It wasn't going to be your third baseman. And so if you wanted a new leadoff guy, it was most likely to come from your center fielder. Well, if you resign yourself to that fact, then you accept it. No matter who they put out there, whomever they get, is not going to be as good as Drew Stubbs. Because as you mentioned, and I agree, Drew Stubbs is elite defensively. They were not going to be able to find anybody as good defensively as him. So if Shin-Soo Choo gets on base 38% of the time and makes Joey Votto better and makes Jay Bruce better and makes Brandon Phillips better offensively, I think we'll be able to live with him not getting to the same amount of balls that Drew Stubbs did. And he's not going to. I mean, when the Reds made the trade, I said, look, prepare yourself for the day where the ball goes over Shin-Soo Choo's head and it costs him a game, because that's going to happen. But if he hits, they'll be able to make up for what they're not getting defensively. And I don't think he's going to be a train wreck. There seems to be this belief that he's going to be an abject disaster. When I went out to Arizona, he looked very, very comfortable. He's going to get to a lot of balls. He has a very good arm. He's still very fast, and he's going to work really hard at it. He just doesn't have the natural instinct and the speed that Drew Stubbs does, but nobody else did. So, I don't think it's fair to compare him to Drew. Can he be a little bit above average? I think so. As far as Todd Frazier at third base, now, Scott Rowland's mantle speaks for itself. The guy has 8 Gold Gloves.
Yep.
And, I think it's fair to wonder if Todd Frazier can be adequate, but I don't know that if Todd Frazier's adequate that the drop-off is that huge. I mean, Scott did a really good job of getting to the balls that were hit right to him, but the last couple of years he looked kind of creaky, didn't have great range. I think struggled on getting balls down the line, and I think benefited last year from the fact that Zach Cozart was playing to his left. I think Todd Frazier can be adequate, but again, you're not going to get Scott Rowland. But can you get offensive production for 150, 145 starts from Todd Frazier that you couldn't count on the last couple of years from Scott? If so, you'll live with him not being able to get it done defensively. And then don't forget in the outfield, Ryan Ludwig is still more than capable. Jay Bruce is, I thought last year had a down year defensively, but still very, very capable. The right side of the infield is extraordinarily good. Zach Cozart's solid. There's not gaping holes elsewhere. And I think ultimately the defense is going to be a little bit worse, but they're going to score more runs. And if they score more runs, you can handle giving up an extra run or two.
I totally agree with you. Again, we have Mo Egger on the line, ESPN, 1530, 700 WLW, Cincinnati. I did want to kind of ask you about, what do you think the Reds versus NL Central this year?
Well, I don't think anybody in the Central necessarily got better. The Cardinals are one of those teams, and we saw it last year. I don't count them out until I see, a mark next to their name that tells me they're eliminated. But, they've already had some issues. Mott's going to miss the early portion of the season here. Carpenter's not going to be around. I wonder if their offense can be as good as it was last season. I'm not necessarily sure, but I also don't think the Reds are going to win 97 games either. I think the Reds will win the division. I think Milwaukee did nothing to really improve themselves. I think Pittsburgh really did nothing to improve themselves, and even if the Cubs did, the gap is so wide. At the same time, everything went well for the Reds last season. When a guy got hurt, somebody else stepped up. None of the starting pitchers got hurt. The bullpen was awesome. Nearly every button that Dusty Baker pushed was the right one. They send Devin Mesoraco to Louisville. Deanna Navarro comes up and hits. Joey Votto gets hurt. Ty Frazier and Scott Rowland hit. Right when they were getting ready to bag Ryan Ludwig started to hit. So all those things happen. I think what I want to know more than anything is what happens when things happen when we have good. The pitcher gets hurt. What happens when a starting pitcher isn't as good as he was last season? What happens when they suffer that major injury this year? Do they have the depth to compensate for it? I think those are all things I want to know. I don't think they win 97 games, but I think 90, 91 wins will win the division. And I think the Reds are more than capable of putting up that number.
Once again, we have Mo Egger from 700 WLW and 1530 ESPN in Cincinnati on the line with us. Mo, we really appreciate you coming on. Before we let you go, two quick things I want to kind of touch on. We're here in Louisville. Our Louisville Cardinals are still in the tournament.
Your Louisville Cardinals, not mine.
My Louisville Cardinals, I'm sorry. I want to know who your pick is to win the national championship. And I'd also like to know a quick nugget of who should we watch for on this Louisville Bats team here in Louisville this season?
Well, I think the second question is pretty obvious. His name is Billy Hamilton. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun watching him this year. I watched him last Sunday in the game against the Giants hit a triple over the first baseman's head that I would say 50% of major leaguers get a double, 40% of major leaguers get a single, 9% of major leaguers get a triple sliding in the third base. Billy Hamilton made it standing up. You guys are going to have a lot of fun watching him this year. In terms of the tournament, I picked Indiana to win it. I picked them to beat Louisville in the championship game. I see no reason to waver from that, although at the same time, I also picked Georgetown to make the Final Four. So take anything I said with a huge grain of salt. But I thought all year long Indiana was the best team in college basketball. I think Louisville, as impressive as they've been in this tournament, I still don't love them in the half court, and I think Indiana can play either tempo, and so ultimately I'm going to stick with that pick, but I'd hardly be surprised if Rick Pitino's team won 4 more games.
Now, who did you take, Creighton or Cincinnati, being in Cincinnati?
Well, as much as I love the Bearcats, I couldn't pick them on a neutral floor against a good team. And offensively, look at that game against Creighton. They actually played pretty well offensively, and still can't get buckets when needed. So I picked Creighton. The season felt a little unfulfilling for the Bearcats, but I think Mick Cronin got as much out of this team as he possibly could.
I agree. I like Mick Cronin as a coach myself. I appreciate it, Mo Egger, you coming on today, joining us, getting a little update coming into baseball season. I'm sure we'll have you on here down the road.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. You too. I'm like he mentioned, plenty